Family, what's good with you? It's your boy Milky Way J. Welcome back to another banger, and we got another Ohara One Piece theory. And as you can see in the title below, this is about Joyboy's 1,000-year plan. So I'm gonna be real with you. If you're not a manga reader, if you're not really caught up on One Piece in the anime, well, really in the manga too, you shouldn't watch this video. I'm gonna just say that now. If you're caught up in the anime, you can definitely still watch this video. I will have spoiler disclaimers. There's not too much manga talk, but there are some points that are more recent in manga talk that I don't want my anime watchers to be spoiled and caught off guard. Like the video if y'all like the video. Comment down below how y'all felt, thoughts below. Was he right? Was he wrong? What do y'all think? Y'all want me to get into some more One Piece content? Subscribe to the channel if y'all are new. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Spread love to the people that mean most of y'all. And hey, Joyboy's 1,000-year plan. Let's hear what he got to say. Enough of me yapping. Let's get into the video. I'll see y'all in there. All right, let's get into it. Joyboy's 1,000-year plan. Hey,
the real mastermind of the One Piece world is Joyboy. The poneglyphs, the ancient kingdom, and the sun god fruit are all part of his insane 1,000-year-long plan to save the world and bring about the new dawn, or completely destroy everything forever. But before we can get to that, let's start with the first part of this insane 3-layer plan. And that's right, I said 3 layers because Joyboy's plan actually created 2 new plans in the current era, one by the king of the pirates, Goldie Roger, and then another one by his apprentice, Red Hair Shanks. So 3 plans for 1. And weirdly enough, I think this will all make the most sense if we actually start in the middle here and break down Roger's phase of the plan first, because he's kind of the one that actually ties the past and the future together. Alright, first thing first, I think we can assume that Shanks pursued the Nika fruit because of Roger's legacy. In chapter 968, we first learned that Roger briefly spoke to Shanks right after discovering the One Piece, and it caused him to cry his eyes out. And then a couple of years later, Shanks went on to steal the Nika fruit from the world government and brought it to Fuchsia village on Luffy's island, where Luffy then inevitably ate it. Now, I believe Shanks coming to the East Blue was actually also part of Roger's plan to eventually give Ace the Nika fruit, as we learned in that very same chapter that the Roger pirates were way too early when they made it to Laugh Tale. On top of that, it's also implied that Shirahoshi, aka the ancient weapon Poseidon, needed to still be born and then grow up, which would take about 25 years. And this lines up actually incredibly well with when Shanks stole the Nika fruit and how old Ace would have been around this key moment in time as well. But wait a second here. Why do I even think that Roger's plan revolves around Ace to begin with? Well,
Ace is his son. I know he's about to say that. I hope he's about to say that because I'll look crazy if he don't. But Ace is his son, so that's a fact of fact. I'm just interested to see where he's gonna go with this on how Ace is so important, because yeah, Ace had an untimely death. How was this? I'm interested to see how this plan revolved around him.
Once again, in chapter 968, Roger literally confirms that he intended for Ace for his kid to discover the One Piece. He basically wants—
Damn. I don't remember that. Wait, this is what chapter?
To begin with. Well, once again, in chapter 968, Roger literally confirms that he intended for Ace for his kid to discover the One Piece. He basically wants to create the next Joyboy. He shouts this in Rayleigh's face and then disbands the Roger pirates and goes off to have Ace. But
I started reading after that and I really don't remember that in the anime. I started reading the manga after that.
Obviously, Ace would need to be trained, and with his illness, well, Roger wouldn't get the chance to do so himself. And thus, Roger gave his son to his rival, Garp. Now, to be honest, this seems like a pretty odd choice at first. However, Garp and Roger did team up in the past before, for example, to defeat Rocks at God Valley, a place where the Celestial Dragons fully displayed their awful nature. Now, based on the fact that Garp is also a member of the infamous D-Clan, which we'll get to later, and the fact that Sengoku and Akainu seem to have some sort of idea of the true history, based at least on their reactions to Vegapunk's message in chapter 1100.
He is talking about the manga. I'm gonna talk about the manga.
16. I personally wouldn't be surprised at all if Roger chose Garp because he knows more about the true history of the world as well. Maybe it was God Valley and rocks that shared the existence of Laugh-Tale and the poneglyphs with Roger and Garp to begin with. Who knows, that's for a different theory. But on top of this, Roger had a child with Portgas D. Rouge, yet another member of the D clan, and thanks to Vegapunk's cut-off message at the end of chapter 1117, it's now become incredibly clear just how important the will of D and the D clan is actually to the true history and the future
before
of the
that
world.
message
now,
got cut
Roger
out.
clearly wanted to have a child destined for greatness, and he surrounded himself with a bunch of D clan members. Now, really, all that was left was to make sure that Shanks got the Nika fruit for Ace, and that Ace had support along his journey to build him into the next Sun God. And so what Roger did next is position his most trusted crew members across the Grand Line in key positions. As we see, Crocus is set up right in front of Reverse Mountain, and Rayleigh is positioned halfway at Sabaody. Both places where every pirate trying to travel the Grand Line or the New World need to funnel through. Crocus literally points Luffy in the right direction, tells Luffy about Laugh-Tale, and gives them the log post to point them in the right direction as well. And then, of course, we see the Dark King Rayleigh, having heard about Luffy from Shanks, of course, who saves the Straw Hats and then trains Luffy. That is both physically by teaching him how to control his haki, but also mentally by helping him get over Ace's death as well. He's also essential to making it into the New World, as he has to bubble coat the Thousand Sunny as well. And based on how suspiciously strategically these two former Roger pirates were placed along the Grand Line, I do believe that the man, the myth, the legend, Scopper Gaban is very possibly chilling at Lodestar Island.
That was a good guess. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna spoil because he has not. This is stuff that's coming out today. Current manga. Current manga.
The last official island of the Grand Line, awaiting the next.
I'm gonna start giving spoiler disclaimers. I'm gonna let Alessio know for these videos, if I talk about something that's current in the manga that I feel like is a super spoiler, I will make sure to let my editor know. Hey, at this point in the video, at this point in the recording, I'm a timestamp it. Spoiler coming. Put a spoiler disclaimer on the about that. All right, let's get back to
Joyboy as well, but again, that is a totally island of the Grand, is very possibly chilling at Lodestar Island, the last official island of the Grand Line, awaiting the next Joyboy as well. But again, that is a totally different theory of its own, and if you want to see that, let me know. Anyways, after all his prep work was done and he had just fathered a son, Roger then turned himself in, causing the Great Age of Piracy, something that would most likely set his own son off on a journey to chase down the One Piece, all while never knowing the destiny that was laid out for him. Now, in addition to all of this, I do believe that Toki, Odin's wife and a member of Roger's crew, was actually aware of the Joyboy phase of the plan as well, that I'm going to be talking about in just a little bit, because remember, she actually traveled into the present from the Void Century, and that is why she sent Momonosuke and Kinemon forward into the future, conveniently exactly when and where they would need to assist the next Joyboy. Again, we'll get there right in a second. For now, let's talk about how Shanks then continued to lay out Roger's plan.
This might be his craziest in terms of, like, I don't even know what's the word for it. Like some of this stuff could make sense. Obviously, some stuff I already know he was wrong about, but that wasn't really specific to the theory, so not technically yet.
And what he had to do when Luffy actually stole the Nika fruit before Ace could ever eat it. So, Shanks' plan. As I've addressed, Shanks was most likely searching for Ace on Dawn Island, not Luffy, but obviously he had to then completely pivot from Roger's plan once Luffy, yet another D-Clan member, ate the Nika fruit instead. Or maybe the Nika fruit made him eat it, who knows. So he dedicated all of his resources to making sure that Luffy would go on to claim the One Piece, and gave him a symbol that would ensure that anyone else who would encounter him would know who he was.
Luffy is much better with that fruit than Ace. Oh my God, I'm so glad Ace did not get that, John. Oh my God, I'm so glad Ace did not get that, John.
We're of course talking about Roger's Straw Hat. After all, Whitebeard and Mihawk both instantly seem to understand the importance of Roger's hat and what it means for Luffy to have it. For example, we do know that Whitebeard knows what the One Piece is and some of the true history after sharing sake with Roger and before his death. He also knows the truth about the D-Clan, and it just so happens that the moment Whitebeard connects that Luffy is Ace's brother is also the moment he sees the Straw Hat. Remember, before the entire war happened, Shanks met with Whitebeard to discuss Blackbeard, but he clearly knows that Shanks had the Straw Hat and had given it away to someone else. In a nutshell, the Straw Hat symbolizes the person that Shanks entrusted Roger's will to, not just his own. In fact, it's the exact reason that I think Whitebeard invests all of his trust and resources in Luffy to save Ace at Marineford. I don't think it's just dumb luck or Luffy being so charismatic. After all, Whitebeard did take Ace onto his ship knowing about his goals and dreams. It becomes pretty clear after learning about how close Roger and Whitebeard actually were at some point that Ace being Pirate King may have been something all of the greatest pirates were actually trying to make happen together. Whitebeard, Roger, Shanks, all of them were actively pushing to make Ace the next king of the pirates, at least until Luffy then became Joyboy.
That's good. But my thing is where I disagree. Part of me I still feel like Shanks is has his own motives. Like outside of Roger, I feel like Shanks has his own motives. Even, all right, currently in the manga, when we find out who his family is and stuff, I don't think he's doing this all for Roger. He's kind of clearly always been about not been about himself. He gonna do what Shanks wanna do. He's seen the will of Roger. Here's what I feel like. I feel like Shanks seen the will of Roger and Luffy, so he entrusted him with the Straw Hat. He had no intention of trying to get that fruit to Ace. I don't remember specifically when Ace got his fruit, but I do not believe that Shanks was trying to give it to Ace. But that's a good theory.
And interestingly enough, I think that Mihawk is in the exact same boat. He sees Luffy for the first time and immediately goes and talks to Shanks. He also spares Zoro's life and eventually goes on to even train him for Luffy's sake. Something that seems really out of character, especially once Zoro drops to his knees and begs. Now at first, Mihawk is disgusted by this until he realizes that Zoro is doing it for Luffy. And here's the thing, Mihawk and Shanks are really good friends and rivals. It makes a ton of sense that Mihawk, after seeing the insane will and effect that Luffy has had on others, would go on to train his second strongest in command. Once again, he is actively contributing and honestly also impacted by Luffy's Joyboy-esque attitude. And bringing this all the way around, Shanks putting all of the resources into Luffy once again feeds back into Roger's plan as well. Crocus does everything he can to help Luffy, and we do know that Shanks very happily.
Those are good points. How Roger's members are spread out. Rayleigh being on Sabaody, Crocus being on where was he? By the red line. Gabon, where Gabon's at. Gabon and Elbaf. And Elbaf is a huge arc, a huge island of importance. Damn, this is making sense. Why is it making sense? I'm just sitting here thinking about this.
The Straw Hat and losing his arm, or sacrificing his arm. Now, to me, that is
like the path is made for Joyboy.
A clear indication that Rayleigh saw that hat and that cheeky smile of Luffy's and hedged his bets on the Straw Hats. In other words, Luffy is the person he has been waiting for on Sabaody according to Roger's plan. Now it also brings a great sense of purpose to his words about the crew finding a different answer once they reach Laugh Tale. Roger and his crew came to one conclusion, which I believe to be mania after witnessing the horrors of the ancient kingdom at Laugh Tale and the terrifying fate of the world. But if they knew that they just needed to stall a little bit more, 20 more years until a new dawn could be formed, maybe their laughter was just over how funny it was that they put all this effort in and it was practically useless in their own lifetime. Whatever the case may be, Rayleigh seems to double down.
They were the first people to do it. Like they were the pirate crew to finally make it that far, just for them to be too early, and that's what they're laughing about. Wow. like, even with me sitting here saying, I don't think it's true, I'm still putting these pieces that he's laying out in front of me together, and it's making a little bit of sense here, a little bit of sense there. What the heck, Ohara? Shout out to Ja. Hey, Ja, who I just called. We caught up on the manga, and we've been definitely discussing it. Shout out to my dog Slim Trees has been discussing some of these topics. So we have our own theories and stuff, but like, this is good. This is conversation starters.
On this, in chapter 1116, drinking himself under the table and talking about leaving the fun to the new era as Vegapunk reveals parts of the shocking fate and history of the worlds. Now, Shanks doubling down on Roger's plan would also explain pretty perfectly why characters like him, his crew, Crocus, and Rayleigh all seem to have been prepped for undersea travel in some way or form. I bet that one just blew your mind a little bit, because we do know that the Great Flood sank the ancient world, most of it, and if the grand plan revolves around something that's actually now under the ocean, Rayleigh's bubble business, Crocus living inside a literal whale, and the red-haired crew all lacking devil fruits would make all of that a lot more easy.
Crocus wasn't a fucking whale. Damn, it's been so long. It's been years since I've watched that. I've been rewatching too, but I started at like the time skip.
Easy, and also makes a lot of sense.
I need to touch up on some of all of this.
Okay, but now that we've actually covered the basics, here's what I believe that Shanks' full plan actually looks like. Step 1 is to find the Nika fruit and give it to Ace. However, he has been pivoting hard since Luffy took that by accident. And if we base things on the claim that zone fruits have a will of their own and Roger actively ensured his son would inherit the will of D, it seems to imply that a D clan member needed to consume that god fruit in some way or form. Next, Shanks then sets Luffy down to the path of definitely wanting to become a pirate, and specifically Pirate King, and puts all of his resources and allies into helping Luffy, including Crocus, Rayleigh, Mihawk, and even Whitebeard. After that,
because Luffy is Luffy. Luffy, I feel like regardless, his meeting of Shanks was going to push him to do that. I don't really like Shanks probably had a little bit of motivation. Like, yeah, like I said, he's seen the will of Roger probably in Luffy from the jump. Luffy also has that in him to where he could himself just want to become that one, be inspired and want to be the best.
He then decided to lay low and pull strings behind the curtain, pushing things in the right direction for Luffy, as we see him doing with his visit to the Gorosei, for instance, in chapter 907. However, during Marineford, Luffy's life is at real risk, so he shows up to save him, specifically. Now, coincidentally enough, another D-Clan member, Trafalgar Law, ends up actually rescuing Luffy and taking away, and Rayleigh then trains him. And after all this, Shanks then goes back into hiding until he finally sees Luffy awaken Gear 5th, becoming Nika and the next Joyboy. Now, with this major milestone, he then sets sail for the One Piece himself, as he realizes that the 25-year wait is over and the new dawn is closing in. Okay, so I do think that Roger and Shanks' plan kind of makes sense here, but why? Why is all of that so important? Well, that is of course all thanks to our third and main act, Joyboy's mega plan. And once again for this, I think we need to do some groundwork here that will help really build up this incredible 1,000-year scheme. Here's some of the things that we do know for sure as a fact about Joyboy and what he set out to accomplish. Number 1.
My bad, I'm back.
At this point, it's become pretty clear that Joyboy had the Nika fruit himself and used it to fight the world government. We've actually seen him with the classic Nika form. Characters like Zunisha, the Iron Giant, and Vegapunk have all remarked about Luffy's Gear 5th either being Joyboy's return, or at least reminding them of Joyboy or Nika. We literally see this with a
lot more than just them three, but those are three huge figures that actually have knowledge of ancient history to where they're referencing it actually matters. But a lot more people have recognized Luffy's Gear 5 as Joyboy, as Nika.
Iron Giant and Vegapunk in chapters 1111, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and Zunisha even confirms this during Luffy's very first awakening back in chapter 1043. Now, Vegapunk also confirmed for us that Nika and Joyboy are in fact not the same person, meaning that Joyboy must have eaten the Nika devil fruit during the Void Century, and that Nika themselves go back way further than that. And on top of that, we have also—
So Nika, the sun god, is different than Joyboy. Joyboy ate Nika's fruit. Oh, and Joyboy is his own entity.
Also learned a whole bunch from Vegapunk about the Void Century that has really helped solidify this entire theory about Joyboy's plan, because at some point we know that Joyboy battled against the 20 kingdoms, and as a result of using the ancient weapons, the world was flooded by 200 meters. Now, whether you think that the flooding happened in tiny little increments of 1 meter or all at once, or you agree with me that it could have been 2 different floods, as I discuss in my massive Bing Sake theory that you should check out after this, it doesn't really matter. The world was flooded, that's a fact, and the ancient weapons and Joyboy had something major to do with it. Personally, I believe that Joyboy's master plan hinges on really one of 2 possible outcomes here, and that's the reason why Rayleigh implied that the Straw Hats could maybe come to a different conclusion than them. Either flooding the world using the ancient weapons, creating a fully new era, or destroying the Red Line and eliminating the flooded waters from the world in One Piece. Now, of course, either of these could accomplish the very same purpose, which is defeating the evil world government and accidentally creating the mythical All Blue, something we all know needs to happen somehow for Sanji's personal dream to be achieved as well.
Okay, these are great points, and we 26 minutes into this recording, so I'm not really going to get into it, but we are eventually going to have a talk as my community, as One Piece fans, as people, as manga readers as well. I need to make a video. I don't want to start a podcast yet. I don't want to, but I need to have some of these talks with y'all, with the community. The world government's evil as shit.
Well, and so since we know that Joyboy was the first pirate and he set out on a journey that ultimately led to the Great War and eventually released all the ancient weapons, we can actually draw a few very important conclusions from all of this. For example, one thing that is for sure is that the ancient weapons are most likely directly tied to Nika, not to Joyboy. After all, if Joyboy is using the Nika fruit and that is what causes the ancient technology to activate, like the Iron Giant here, well, there's probably some sort of secret to the Nika form or Nika's powers that are tied into all of this. We also know that the incredibly ancient races like the Giants and the Skypians worshipped the sun god Nika, not Joyboy, and their history goes way more back than just the Void Century. It goes back thousands of years.
Because they weren't affected by the flood.
Toss in all the imagery of the sky races, the sun, and possibly the eternal flame from Enel's cover story, and we've got ourselves a sun god Nika that potentially came down from somewhere from outer space alongside the ancient weapons way before even the Void Century. And actually another really important distinction here is that the ancient weapons in Japanese are actually called ancient weapons, while the ancient kingdom is a mistranslation in English and is actually called the Great Kingdom, kind of separating that connection that I think many English speakers assume exists between these two factions. The ancient weapons most likely are way older. And so if we assume that Nika brought the ancient weapons down thousands of years ago and Joyboy then later discovered them, then we are really cooking here, as you'll see in a second. Now, at some point, the ancient kingdom, which presumably turned into the world government based on Joyboy losing the ancient war, took control of Uranus. How do we know that? Well, because Imu used Uranus to raise the sea 1 meter by destroying the island of Lulusia Kingdom, a fact that Vegapunk once again confirms as fact in chapter 1115. And so the real question here is, what was Joyboy's goal and why do the poneglyphs point towards it? And I think a lot of those answers might lie in the mystery man on top of the One Piece world, Nerona Imu. So what do we actually know about Imu? Well, we do know for certain that Imu and Nefertari D. Lily have some sort of deep, weird connection, as Imu, a person of very few words, has spoken a surprisingly large amount about Lily specifically and seems to be obsessed with her image. That includes staring at this massive portrait of her in chapter 1117 and having a picture of Vivi, Lilith's descendant, up in the flower room at Marie-Joie as well. And speaking of things that Imu has up at Marie-Joie, we also know that Imu keeps this giant straw hat in a freezer somewhere hidden in the Holy Land.
Marie-Joie. Ja, why you tell me it was called Marie-Joie? It's Marie-Joie. Not Marie-Joie.
As well. Now, I do want to quickly pivot back to Lily here for a second, because we also know that at some point towards the end of the Giant War during the Void Century, Lily made a grave mistake, at least according to Imu, and released the poneglyphs into the world. As we know, the poneglyphs are obviously super important as they tell the true story of the Void Century, the Ancient War, and also give the directions to the final Island Laugh Tale, as well as to the remaining ancient weapons, or at least definitely to Pluton and Poseidon. Not to mention that these directions and poneglyphs are all connected to races and clans heavily connected to Joyboy. The Lunarians, the Minks, and the Fishmen are some really good and big examples here, but the Kozuki clan are also heavily tied to the poneglyphs, maybe even the heaviest, as we discovered that they are actually the ones who created them in the first place. Shout out to my man Kozuki Sukiyaki for telling Robin and Law that at the end of Wano. You're making my life really, really easy, old geezer. Thank you. I appreciate your contribution here. But anyways, why is all of that important for Joyboy's plan? Well, there are a couple of really odd things about Imu and their motives, and I do think that they explain really well what the real secret plan is. And let me just ask you, why in the world hasn't Imu just straight up killed Luffy? Why haven't the Holy Knights been chasing after him? If the awakening of the Sun God Nika is so important and bad for the world government.
That's a good question. I was actually thinking about that, because as I'm learning about these Holy Knights, Imu, these characters that are way stronger than Luffy's ever been, why didn't they just hunt him down and then when the fruit reappears, get the fruit again, or try to get the fruit? Why are they allowing him?
Why is it that the Gorosei are the one trying to defeat Luffy, not Imu? Honestly, we've hardly ever seen Imu take any action against the Straw Hats to begin with. Also, why didn't they try to kill Zunisha? Or why didn't they fully destroy the Iron Giant, another character directly tied to Joyboy? And of course, what in the world is going on with that giant Straw Hat that Imu has under lock and key in the Holy Land? All of these questions don't point to someone really who wants Joyboy dead or wants Joyboy to stay unawakened, if you get my drift. Now, the Gorosei, they're a different story. They clearly do want that, but Imu doesn't seem all that bothered. And so with all of that in mind, I propose a very, very different idea, something I don't think is too popular, but to me, it would actually seal the deal on Joyboy's plan and maybe be the perfect twist at the end of the story. Okay, here it is. I believe that Imu, the big, bad, ultimate villain guy that we all fear, is actually working to help Joyboy's master plan. They are the mole, the person on the inside, making sure that just enough is done to reawaken Joyboy, bringing the new dawn. Okay, I know that's a really big statement, but hear me out. Let's face it. Based on what we know, the Gorosei and the 20 Kingdoms were the people who...
Wow, that's what he thinks? I don't know. Imu seems pretty evil to me. I don't know about that one. But I will say this. I feel like Imu had a direct connection with Joyboy in a different way, but I don't think he's trying to help him.
Fought against Joyboy. They did not want him to succeed. People who fought against Joyboy. They did not want him to succeed, whatever that actually was supposed to look like. But clearly, not all of them were against him, because Lily, for instance, exists as well. She proves to us that he had allies within that system, so what if Imu played the villain? They, out of love for Lily or for Joyboy and knowing what needed to be done, are playing the long con here to facilitate the actual reincarnation of Joyboy and the return of his
That
era.
would make
After
sense
all, the
on why
Roger
he wouldn't
pirates
kill
have
him, but
no
like,
business still being alive at this point. If the truth of the ancient world was so bad and Emu couldn't afford it to be leaked, Rayleigh, Crocus, and really everyone else on that crew should have been long gone and assassinated by now. And yet, instead, they leave it up to the Marines and the world government to try and deal with these characters. And so with all of that being said, let me tell you what I believe Joyboy really set up all those many hundreds of years ago.
I'm gonna say this before I lose my train of thought, because I don't want him to continue and me forget about that specific point. I want to say something about that point. I think also at the end of the day, if the Holy Knights and these people go and try to hunt all of these characters, you know, the Roger pirates that are still alive, I feel like they stir up a lot more than letting them exist and not like, and just chill. Yeah, I don't think everybody knows about this plan to where they're like, okay, these Roger pirates are that much of an issue. I think as long as they're staying hidden, they're letting them live, because the Marines are the people that are out there. The Holy Knights, Emu, even the elders, they're not necessarily putting themselves out there like on the front lines that much.
And how
they're trying to stay behind the shadows.
Dawn in the current era with Luffy. Joyboy, the very first pirate, set sail and awakened all the ancient weapons. On purpose, or maybe even by accident, he ended up using them and the sea levels rose. In response, the ancient kingdom composed of the 20 kings could not let this fly. They themselves used Uranus, the ancient weapon that they acquired, to wage a battle against Joyboy and his crew. Now, knowing that this would probably be his last fight one way or the other, he laid out a plan to one day undo all the damage that had been done. He had the poneglyphs made alongside the Kozuki and had Lily then disperse them to the different races that he had allied himself with. Those were the Minks, the Lunarians, the Fishmen, and the Shandorans, who we all know fought in the Great War thanks to Robin in chapter 272. But obviously, Joyboy had to use the ancient weapons under his control, Pluton and Poseidon. And so he does make sure that the fishmen receive a poneglyph apologizing for his actions, something that would break his promise to them, potentially a kind will statement that he would never actually use Poseidon. He then entrusts the Kozuki clan and the fishmen with the ancient weapons afterwards, and they end up hiding them alongside the other kingdoms. Emu, though, as one of the 20 kings, is forced to make a really difficult decision here. Side with the enemy against Lily and Joyboy, or secretly help them out. They have to choose. And so they do go on to facilitate everything that Joyboy needs, all while giving him just enough resistance to sell it. Ultimately having to witness, or maybe even themselves, killing Joyboy in cold blood. But all is not lost, because thanks to the poneglyph spreading and his time-traveling companion Toki, the will of Joyboy can live on into the future. Toki will actually travel to the future and ensure a Kozuki allies themselves with the man destined to bring the new dawn, and brings Odin to Roger. But then maybe Toki realizes that she's too early and then sends her son Momonosuke into the future where he meets Luffy. And can I mention that it's really suspicious that both Momonosuke and Shirahoshi are actually born around the time that Toki arrives in the present time, both actually with the powers to control ancient weapons, which might just not have been an accident at all, but actually Toki bringing something with her from the Void Century that could pass on these powers. As a result, all they now have to do is make it to Laugh Tale, where they will finally learn how to use Poseidon, the person that Roger was too early for, to help flood the world once more, or deflood the world and such defeat the world government once and for all. And that choice is now up to Luffy, the next Joyboy. Or maybe he will just choose anarchy and cause true freedom for everyone. Regardless, this theory was a blast to put together, and I do think there is quite a lot there, and actually I have more thoughts on everything I said so far. So if you have anything that supports it, or that I missed, or even something that debunks it, if you have something, please leave your own ideas in the comments below.
Same for y'all. Leave y'all ideas in the comments below. I don't agree with everything he said, but a lot of what he said made sense and sounded good. It's good conversation points, good conversation starters. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff isn't confirmed, and some of the stuff has already been proven wrong based on current manga, with that being said, I think this was still a lot of depth, still a lot of good points in this theory, different levels to the theory. Like he said, this was a 40-minute, I've been recording for 40 minutes. Hopefully this isn't a 40-minute video. It might be. Let me know how y'all feel about the comments below. Like the video if you liked the video. Subscribe to the channel if y'all are new. Joyboy's 1,000-year plan. Man, that was very interesting. It was good, cool, because also I'm caught up on the manga. So some of the stuff I just read, and I'm glad I did, because now it wasn't spoiled for me, and now I can know whether to put spoiler alerts for y'all if y'all are anime only watchers. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. I'll catch y'all on the next video. It's your boy Milky Way J. I'm out of here. Y'all be safe. Y'all be good.